Fire alarm calling paramedic number 1. That's a cardiac arrest. They want you to bring all the necessary supplies in for the cardiac arrest.
Before we had advanced cardiac life support with a paramedic system, it was extremely unusual to successfully resuscitate somebody in the field. There's a very narrow window, a critical time when you have to get to a patient and resuscitate them if they're going to survive.
Yeah, and with a cardiac arrest.
With a cardiac arrest. And that time, you know, in a sense, when somebody has a cardiac arrest at home, it's as if somebody starts a stopwatch right there, and you have to begin getting blood and oxygen to the brain within 4 minutes, or you're not going to ever recover normal brain function. The concept of advanced life support is that we want to try to extend the services that we provide in the emergency unit out into the field. There are many acute medical problems that need to be dealt with within minutes of when a patient develops that problem. So that if we wait until we just pick up a patient with a basic ambulance, bring them into the emergency room, it may be too late to really help that patient. The paramedics get to the scene, in a sense, begin to work with the firefighters who are already there, make an initial assessment of the patient, and then contact one of our physicians in the emergency room. Tell them what the patient looks like, what kinds of problems they're having, what their vital signs are. And then the resident here in the emergency room, the doctor here in the emergency room, discusses the case with the medic, gives him instructions and orders over the radio so that we can begin treating as if the patient were in our emergency room. The paramedic serves as the ears, the hands, the eyes of the doctor. It's as if he's now able to pretend that he's out in the field and getting that information that's necessary to take care of the patient.
Dr. Wayne, read your loud and clear. Go ahead.
Okay, sir, we're currently in the home of a 64-year-old female who's complaining of a substernal chest tightness. She denies any pain specifically. She just has a tight, cramped feeling substernally.
With some radiation to the left shoulder. This woke her from sleep approximately 30 minutes ago. It is accompanied by some shortness of breath. The patient has taken 2 nitro and 1/400 without relief of this episode.
She denies any dizziness, headache, or nausea. Her medical history is remarkable for, I guess, somewhat advanced CAD, congestive heart failure. She's on Lasix.
Has no known drug allergies. On examination, she's alert, oriented to all spheres, somewhat pale, somewhat diaphoretic. She's non-cyanotic.
The Brookline system, which has been going now for almost a year, is set up in a teaching hospital. Beth Israel Hospital is a teaching hospital. So we use our senior medical residents on the radio. They've gone through an extensive training program, and it's really worked out quite well. They're under supervision from myself and Dr. Basner, who's the assistant director of the program. And the system is unique in that we have such a tightly controlled system. We review every single case every day in our system. We make transcripts of each of the calls. All the calls are taped, which is a regulation really within the state. And we have transcriptions of those tapes and review them on each day, and then have teaching conferences several days a week with the paramedics and with the residents. So what we're trying to do, in addition to provide the best care, you know, with a system that involves physicians and medics, is to train our medics, to educate our medics to what I think may be ultimately perhaps the highest level in the state, because we have the most intensive training program and continuing education program of any of these systems. And if we can get our medics to go beyond just what they're trained as medics in the sense of their education as medics, which is extensive in its own right, but get them to understand even more the medicine that they're dealing with so that they can anticipate what a resident, what a doctor in the emergency room is going to tell them. That makes them better. It makes the total care in the system better.
The paramedics and the residents have a very good relationship, at least here in the Beth Israel Hospital, in that we know them personally, and after we've talked to them a little bit on the phone, we really get a good assessment of what they're thinking and how they feel how sick the patient is. And we have rounds at this hospital with the paramedics to go over different issues, and they themselves come in, and if they know us, which they always come in with different strips or different electrocardiograms or different scenarios and ask if they did anything wrong or should they have done something differently. And we go with them and we get also feedback from them, because when they're out in the field, it's not like you're in a controlled situation in the hospital where you have the ability to have all the nurses here and all the different equipment. You don't have to take a person out of a 5-story walk-up, and these people have to deal with all the physical surroundings and problems that you see out in the field. And it's a very difficult situation, at least in the beginning, for a resident who is not probably comfortable with the radio, but after being on the radio quite a bit of time and having established this relationship with the paramedics, it's a very rewarding situation.
I would say that the key to success in the Brookline system would have been that indeed it is a system. It is not an isolated company coming in and trying to perform a skill. It's not a hospital trying to do something on its own, nor town services like police or fire attempting to perform the service on its own.
Our dispatcher will take the call 911. He will usually immediately notify the fire and the ambulance and the Brewster Ambulance Company and the sector car. The sector car is en route while the fire and ambulance company is being notified. Our advantage is an obvious advantage. We're on the street, we're usually in the sector, and we're usually pretty close by. So our assessment as a first responder is valuable. Our primary duty as police officers is first responders to administer whatever first aid we can when we arrive, but the moment that the fire department arrives, which is instantaneous after us usually, we must cede to them, to the EMT, let him take over, and he would run the operation, and then he, if he needs the police officer to assist, would assist, and then when the paramedic arrives with ALS, he takes over, and all three can work together. But one has to realize that the ultimate role is the role of the paramedic, that he's the man in charge, he's the one who has the contact with the base hospital, he's the one who knows what's going down and what's going to be taking place, and he is in charge at that time.
Sometimes calls don't tend to be precisely what you receive them to be, so you've always got an element of the unknown in it. You can use history and past experience as a guide, but every call has to be treated individually.
You got to expect the unexpected.
A similar individual with the same complaint the last 19 times, it's still going to be different in some way, and you have to treat it so.
So the big rule of thumb is to just always expect the unexpected.
I feel like you make an impact on society. I know that sounds perhaps a little corny, but you can go home at the end of the day and say, well, you know, I did something today, and maybe I made a difference. And there are very few things in today's world that you can say that with any element of truthfulness.
It's a real good system. I think we've come a long way from the old days.
Mm-hmm. And why don't you describe the old days to us, what that was
Well,
like?
it was the best we had. We would do basically the same thing, only we weren't trained as much. There's no doubt about that. We were first responders probably, but basically we weren't trained the way we are today. We probably put the person in the police car, drove them down, and tried to get them to the hospital as quick as possible. It was as good as we had then. It's certainly not as good as we have now.
In my opinion of the ALS system is that I have to untrain people who are used to the old system which I referred to initially. Get on the scene, get them off the street, get them to the hospital. And what we have to do is educate people that right now on the scene they are getting the best possible medical care they can get, and we're providing for them. It may take longer, but I shudder to think that over the years, in the 30 years I've been here, how many people may have been more seriously injured in transport, or may have been even lost their lives probably, as a result of not being able to give them immediate, instantaneous care at the scene. If I may, I can go back to a tragic fire in Coolidge Corner. It was an old restaurant there called the Waldorf, and firefighters were being overcome by smoke by hordes, it seemed. I think about 20 firefighters ended up in the hospital, and I can still see it. It was a hot night, and as the station wagons, the police used to use station wagons as ambulettes, small ambulances in the street. You could not administer to